And I think I actually want to start by telling you guys a story. Mark Boccuzzi and I were at Gary Schwartz's lab for a number of years at the University of Arizona. We also did biophoton imaging there, and we did things like gamma and X-ray detection, and we worked on plants and worked on people. But for a long time, when we first got in the Roper Scientific biophoton imaging system, which is a lovely $70,000 toy that the Optical Sciences lab got for us, we didn't have a standard black box to put it in. And we finally got a grant in, and it came in, and I went running into Gary's office, and I said, it's here, the box is here. And he looked at me and he went, only a scientist would be excited about a big black medical box. It's a perspective on what's exciting. One of the challenges that we have within energy healing is that there are thousands of styles of energy healing. Bill just expressed his. But there are 7,000 versions of Qigong. There are 126 versions of Usui Reiki. And there are, a good 50 versions of full spectrum healing and things like that. So one of the challenges that scientists have, particularly if they're not practitioners themselves, is how in the heck do I test this? What do I get that's going to provide me any kind of reliable information? Starting into this, I need to say a thank you. I need to say thank you to Gary. I need to say thank you to Iris and to Anne. And just for the record, I don't do my own statistics. I am dyslexic. I'm very dyslexic, and even though I got A's in stats, I don't do it. I send it to either Gary or to Jens Eckhoff. If you have questions about my statistics, you get to go talk to them. We have done 14 studies with multiple trials. The studies actually started in the fall of 2003 and continued on. The very first study was presented in 2004. And the studies have ranged from a 0.01 to, as you can see, 6 zeros in front of the 1, depending on the trial, depending on the instrument. When we have the largest of the studies before this one, we did 9 of the elements in the test, not all 15, which is in this last test. We did do 200 actives and 30 controls. Be aware that the controls were not able to do a number of these tests. All right, I can't include the control data in the particular data I'm sharing with you today. It's under a different IRB. So we are actually running a set of controls now under the current IRB so that I can share more of that. And I will go ahead and share specifics as I go. The current test actually has over 500 people. We managed to get 213 recorded into the spreadsheets before we went ahead, and we're analyzing the data to bring to you guys. So with the meter measures, it's a 0.05. In some of the other measures, it gets really yummy. These are some of the key findings that are presented. I'm sorry, it's small. I wanted to give you an overview of the number of trials and the amount of work that's been done to develop the test. We have individually tested each section of the test. We have individually worked with various healing community groups. For example, we went and tested 43 Eden Energy Medicine practitioners on site at an Eden training program class. We went to Healing Touch program and tested 83 people in 3 days at a Healing Touch program conference. So that's the kind of work that we've been doing to try and, 1, get information out to the community, and 2, get a broad spectrum of the healing practitioners. In this particular group, there have been 20 different versions of energy healing that have been in these 500 of the predominant groups. There have been the occasional small group practitioner. And this is the Triaxial Extra Low Frequency Magnetic Field meter. As I said just a minute ago, it's a P less than 0.05. Data significance is down on the bottom. Change from baseline is key. So we baseline the room. We go ahead and put the healer's hands in place when we ask them to turn on and off the wave. There's been a problem in the energy healing community with lots and lots of drama associated with it. Oh, I can't stop running Reiki, I'm attuned. Sorry, probably not the politest thing to say. But it's a problem, it's a violation. And it's absolutely inappropriate for a healing practitioner to work on someone without someone's express verbal permission. This is the data logging multimeter. It's bog standard, boring. You pay 19 bucks at Home Depot. And we were looking at galvanic skin response type voltage effects, both in AC and DC. And we were able to see something that I think is very important within the healing paradigm. If somebody's sick, they're stuck. What does a healer do? They make it wiggle. And when they make it wiggle, everything changes. Now, it may wiggle more negatively for a bit, but you destabilize the stuck system. And so what we were asking them to do in both the previous test with the triaxial extra low frequency magnetic field meter and with the data logging multimeter, and some of the tests that you're going to see moving forward in the RF field meters, is make it wiggle. We asked them to turn on the wave and turn off the wave, and we're looking at the oscillations both of strength and of amplitude in specific frequency ranges. And over the course of this test, we actually go all the way from 0 hertz up through 8 gigahertz. We're looking again at AC current. This is again the data logging multimeter. And as you can see, 213 people, it's relatively reliable as a measure. I took this on the road and I actually became very, very concerned about experimenter effects. So I went ahead and I started to field teams that would take the data out. And I've talked to a number of different labs who've also replicated stuff. Gaetan Chevalier has been doing some of the work. Xin Lin at UC Irvine did some of the work, so that we could look at whether or not there was a direct experimenter effect. And with other people holding the space, we're still getting reliable results. So hopefully this will be of help long term. RF Field Explorer, this is a handheld spectrum analyzer. How many people here know Carl Merritt? Okay, we've got some, but not a lot. All right, Carl's an electrical engineer as well as being an MD, and he's also my cousin. So when I have a good electrical engineering question, I go take it to Carl and I say, does this pass muster? And this spectrum analyzer actually passed the Carl test. It was really lovely. One of the things that was pretty interesting was that this spectrum analyzer was looking in particular frequency ranges, and we were looking at dBs. And we were seeing changes in dB that we're not seeing in the controls. And the controls that I've got running right now, I've had one practitioner that I brought in, one control that I brought in that managed to produce some of the RF field effects. That person happens to be a veterinary assistant. So I'm not entirely sure it was a clean selection. We're going for folks that see the flyers at Starbucks and call in and say they're interested in coming and getting tested, and a whole stack of ranchers, because I live in the middle of nowhere and I posted it on the mailboxes out near the house. And this is a very, very large area. Mailboxes are 2.5 miles from my house, just to give you a perspective. So there are a fair number of people looking at it. But the RF field strength was something that I actually hadn't expected in the beginning. Now, Beverly mentioned in her talk earlier, looking at the low down point. We're not looking on some of these measures at the palm chakra. And I want to translate this, okay? I'm a hardcore visual. I was born a visual. I come from a lineage that's 3,000 years old of women doing this work. We were part of the chatelaines of Europe. You proved that you had the right to rule because you did miracles on feast days. So I started being trained in this stuff at the age of 4 in my grandmother's rose garden. And anyone who wants to do a viewing on it, you're welcome. You can see me standing there going, you know, kinds of things. The process that was involved in that, you charge various fields in the hands, and some lovely, lovely work was done by Ann Baldwin at University of Arizona, looking at microcapillary dilation of the hands, and she found that actually hands charge within traditional lines. So I mentioned that because specifically for the triaxiometer, we're looking at the low down point, which is here, and if you come and find me afterward, I'll actually show it to you. You'll see it pop up. I can make it charge in such a way you can see it pretty clearly. And in the RF field meter, we're actually looking at the full hand. We do a sweep, and then we hold approximately across the top of the ball of the hand, all right? Okay. Acoustimeter is less reliable. It's not as expensive as a device, but it did something really kind of interesting. And one of the most exciting things in watching healers take this test is that they literally go through a transformation process while they take the test. Most of the people that I'm testing are long-term practitioners. We've found that if people have 3 years paid healings, actually I don't know if Larry's still here, but it was his group at Samueli that developed this definition of 3 years, 6 paid healings per week as a defining professional characteristic. We found that actually when people hit that point, they do take the test fairly reliably. This test is not perfect for all types of healing. I can't begin to claim that yet, all right? But this is a starting place. And the acoustimeter actually allows the practitioner to hear what their hands are doing. And it's been a fascinating experience to have one earplug in mine and one earplug that they get to listen to and have them hear what their hands are doing. It's the joy that goes across someone's face in that moment when they've spent 30 years standing in surrender and in trust is glorious. It's a magnificent moment to experience. So again, the spectrum analyzer is more reliable than the acoustimeter. It is to be expected, but some very, very nice results in radio frequency and looking specifically at the strength of the form. We also used a version of the BioWell, which is an earlier version. Beverly mentioned some of the characteristics. The GDV is actually a diagnostic device in 32 countries, and it's on the space station, and the US thinks it's highly experimental. What's wrong with this picture? 750 studies at the Physics Institute in Leningrad, and we consider it highly experimental. So 10-minute healings. The first one, the practitioner has to work on themselves. We do a baseline image of the fingers. Then they have to select something that they're going to work on. They get 10 minutes to do the healing. When we started the tests, we actually gave them a full hour, and we found it wasn't necessary. So over the years, we've reduced it to a 10-minute spot healing, and we asked the practitioners to make a physiological change in the body as measured by the gas emission. And in that process, as you can see, we have an 84% of the people tested were able to do this successfully. Then we hand them a client that they don't know. And the client gets baseline fingers, and the client selects what they want to have change. And the healer is given 10 minutes to make the change. Now, different from Bill's technique, where there is no specific process and there is no specific flow necessarily, and it happens because healing is necessary. This is actually a push wave driven. When you think about the energies, you need to think about the mechanics of waves. Push, pull, stop, allow, grounded flow, modulating flow, flatten a wave, add noise to a wave, add information, depth, color, all sorts of pieces like that. Makes a difference. Next one, and one that I consider extremely important, is the pH and the alkalinity of the process. If you have someone who is ill, the big killer is inflammation. If you can change the pH of water, you can change the pH of blood, therefore you can affect inflammation. So we take water, we have it normalized, it sits out for 48 hours, which is scientific standard, and then the healer has 10 minutes to make a change in the pH. The device is sensitive to a 0.1 digit. The average actually is a 0.5. The median is a 0.5 digit change. And data is actually significant to a 0.001 for this particular group. Alkalinity is not as strong, and one of the most interesting things is the split decision, because we had people change alkalinity and not change pH. We had people change pH up and down and not change alkalinity. We had people move alkalinity up and pH went up, or it went down, or it stayed absolutely the same. And so it's really interesting, and we need to go back and look at the correlative responses, because I think the more interesting data, even than the fact that they were able to make a change, though it's very valid and very important, is going to be how they're manipulating the matter, because they are manipulating matter. This is a cold read and client questions. We simply want to confirm that a practitioner is competent to speak to their client. And we want to be sure that if they do a medical intuitive type read, that they're actually doing a relatively competent job. Frankly, I think most of them need anatomy and physiology. It's kind of my bugaboo. Healers need to take anatomy and physiology. It's disrespectful to the humans to not do that. Gives you some percentage perspective. Okay, broadcast frequency counter. A chakra is an electromagnetic field produced by a nerve plexus. Now, we get lots and lots of airy-fairy information about chakras, but I'm sorry, I'm a hardcore visual and I've been looking at it for 61 years, okay? If you don't believe me, that's fine, learn to see. And then you can come back and talk to me and say that I'm wrong. But if you have not learned to see, go do the measurement. Don't play with airy-fairy. A chakra is produced by a nerve plexus. It is the electromagnetic field, which acts much the same way a whirlpool does, and it pulls current in and sends current out. It is part of your early warning system, so that you know where the lion is in the jungle so you don't get eaten. A broadcast frequency counter is a passive measurement. It allows you to check in the center of the chakra whether or not the person is actually charging in that area. A standard technique within the healing community is to do a thing called ground and charge. And one of the lovely things that we found is in the 300 megahertz and the 3 gigahertz range is that the second chakra was consistently depressed. Welcome to Puritanism. And then we did a physiology suite. This is, again, a bog standard biofeedback suite developed by Thought Technologies. They've been around. They're one of the oldest biofeedback companies in the world. This is a package that can be fielded out to a remote site. I've taken it to 6 countries. So you can take it. The airlines get a little weird, but they're coping. You call them in advance and let them know. So we do have a fair amount of data that supports the fact that the practitioners can be tested prior to a scientific evaluation to show whether or not they're suitable to use in the laboratory, which may help get a floor underneath whether or not we go forward with a particular practitioner group. And I think I'm pretty much out of time. Thank you all.
open for questions.
Thank you very much for that talk. It would seem that you have a lot of different measures to be used on each potential healer. How do you determine sort of aggregately whether or not a particular healer is suitable, in the sense that you're going to have to do some kind of summation of all these, or in some fashion you're going to have to figure out what measures are more important, or how to sum them, or how to average them? And I would imagine different healers, different types of healers would do better on some measures than others.
That's correct.
So how do you sort all that out?
At this point, we haven't. At this point, we've just been getting a test to start with. Because there are so many different types of healers, we can now begin to norm within healing school lines. We are in the process of doing that statistically. And we're in the process of being able to better evaluate. But the key tests would be RF field oscillation, extra low frequency magnetic field oscillation, and changing the pH. Those are the ones that I would really like to see be the primary measures. Having said that, it takes about 2 hours. We provide the practitioner with a certificate. We are hoping to do 25,000 practitioners over the course of the next 5 years. There are almost 1 million laying on of hands healers in the country right now. It's an over $8 billion a year industry. So if we can get a cadre of people that have been appropriately tested, hopefully they bring their certificate to the lab, and it makes their life easier.
I heard that an astronomer from Ireland who works with SETI has longitudinal wave detectors and emitters. Could that be an appropriate way to try to measure healers, let's say, non-conventional energies emitted by them?
I would love to go look. I don't know the answer.
Thank you.
I have a question. You mentioned the importance of anatomy. I fully agree with that. However, are there any differences in the competency on these tests or otherwise in healers who know their anatomy and those who don't?
We've never analyzed it for that. That's one of the things that I've got in the works as we do an evaluative questionnaire for the next set of tests. I want more background than I've got. We've been taking Reiki lineage, but we actually have not been doing healer training, except for when we ask them for the alphabet soup after their names. And in general, nursing and medical practitioners, obviously, in terms of the body read, are going to be more competent. They're used to diagnostic criterion, massage therapists, physical therapists, things like that. The lay practitioners, it will depend on the level of clairvoyant skill that they've got, and if they're actually able to see internal to the body. The difficulty is it's actually illegal for them to make a diagnosis, so getting them to talk about something more than, oh, I see a little heat over here, which is appropriate for their level of certification and licensure, it's not appropriate for them to go deeper than that. So we have an aspect of that that needs to be dealt with within the testing process.
Okay, and one more question. Is there variability in the performance of the healers on these measures? And if you test them on one day, it's going to be different than another day.
Can be some in the GDV. Particularly if you test at different times of day, you may get a different level of spectrum analysis, you may get a different area of density and things like that. That is a known issue with the GDV. It's been well documented. So when we retest, we do try and retest at the same time of day. In terms of the RF field, no, we haven't seen a difference with that. I haven't seen a difference in the triaxial meter. One of the triaxial meter concerns I have is gravitational force magnetic fields and fluctuations within the standard magnetic field of the Earth and the way in which the ionosphere is impacting Earth's fields at this point. I haven't done enough analysis against that and against the areas where the data is taken. There may be a secondary effect for that as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.